And I am a key example of that. But I spent 14 years in training and development, organizational development prior to joining a healthcare organization. So I've branched out and went into a whole different field too. So it is possible, even, don't feel like you're stuck in a career forever either.
Erin, would you mind?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Wolfram. I have a bachelor's degree in secondary English education, and I taught high school English for 3 years. Then I went back to school and earned a master's degree in counseling psychology and became a career coach at the University Career Center at KU for several years. Then I went back to school again and got another master's degree in educational technology and did ed tech and instructional design at the University Career Center for several years. I then transitioned to the Kansas Board of Regents, where I worked with the governing board of the higher education systems here in Kansas. And most recently, I purchased Career Advantage, which is a full service career consulting business. So I own and operate Career Advantage as a career consultant. And I'm also a personal trainer, nutrition coach, and strength and conditioning coach.
Excellent.
Can you put some other stuff in there, Erin? I don't
Let me
seem busy
see.
enough.
Yeah, let me give me 5 minutes and I'll throw out a few more things.
And thank you, Erin. Glad you're here as well. And Carolyn, would you mind? You're our representative from the helping professions and the.
Yeah, it's great to meet everybody. I am more of a newbie, so I'm very glad to have this experience. Um, like she said, I'm Caroline. I um, have my bachelor's in social welfare, and since graduating in 2018, I have been working at KVC Health Systems, which is a foster care agency stationed in Olathe, and there's a couple other places in the U.S. Um, and I work on the adoption team. So my title is technically adoption case manager, and I get to really work with some really awesome kids and some really awesome foster families as well. Um, yeah, I don't have as much experience as Erin. That was beautiful and amazing. Uh,
Hey, I interviewed at KBC years ago before I took the position at the Career Center. I interviewed with them.
yeah. So I'm excited to be here and answer everyone's questions.
We're excited to have you here too, and I think you'll bring a lot of experience since you recently went through the job search process. So it's good to have you on the panel.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to start off by um, talking about what advice that you might have for students beginning their job search. We have a lot of seniors, graduated seniors, that are anxious, they're nervous about looking for a job, especially in um, the time that we're in and the pandemic. And they would love to hear some advice from you of what advice would you give? And particularly if you could also include maybe how you found your first job. So anybody can start.
I'll start. So I got the job at KVC right out of college. I graduated May 13th. May 14th, I was in training. And something that I did was, and social work is a little different, but something that I did was I started researching jobs that I wanted to do or jobs that I could find months before graduation. Um, and it can be hard for undergrads to find the jobs that they really want to do with just the undergraduate degree. Um, I did find that was somewhat difficult, um, but I was able to do a passion that I love, which is helping children and getting them towards permanency and in loving and safe homes. So something I do recommend is doing that research. Another thing is I asked around to my professors. They were actually very helpful. I was lucky that we have small class sizes in social work, so I was able to count on my professors a little bit more than maybe some other fields. Um, but I got some really great just advice on where to start looking. For social work undergrads, it's a lot of case manager positions. It's working in psychiatric hospitals as a care support, or in like homes for elderly, things like that. That is a good place to start. Now, if you want to work in a school or a hospital, that's where you want to get your master's, because that requires some more education. But just doing a lot of research and writing down my expectations for how I wanted my first job to look was very helpful.
I can piggyback off of that because actually I was going to talk about something kind of related. I would say utilize the heck out of your network. And I am an extreme introvert. I have a tiny, tiny network, but honestly, every professional job that I've ever had, I got through someone that, or not necessarily got because of, but I was made aware of the opportunity and made additional connections because of somebody that I knew. So my very first teaching job, for example, my uncle, he was a teacher in that area, and he got me connected with the school district that I ended up working at for my first year. Second year, I made a connection with the school district at on-campus interviews that Kansas State had hosted the previous year. The Career Center, my good friend in graduate school worked there and told me about the opportunity. Then I was hired on full-time there. And then Kansas Board of Regents, I had a high school friend who worked there. And now the business that I owned, a friend of a friend used to own it. So, I mean, every professional position that I have had has been, at least partially because I had a connection with somebody within the organization. So utilize your network, tell all of your friends, all of your family, your coworkers, the people that are in your network, what you're looking for, what your skills are. And you never know who's going to know someone who has an opportunity that's a great fit for you.
I'd add to that also, if you're not active on LinkedIn, you really need to be. There is no better way to research and connect with individuals. Start following companies that you might be interested in working in. See who you know who works at those companies. LinkedIn is a great tool. As a talent acquisition manager, I don't spend as much time on it now, but my recruiting team does. And I'll tell you, if we can't find you on LinkedIn, it's almost like you don't exist. So, so if we can find you on LinkedIn, chances are good if there's a good fit and we're looking for somebody with your background, we're going to reach out to you. But if you're not there, it's really hard because, we might have 50 resumes to weed through, and we might be targeting a real specific type of background, whether it's entry level or experience. So LinkedIn is a huge tool that you should be using, especially for research, following companies, trigger events, things that are going on in the company. It's a huge help. So I actually, when I started this new position a little over a year ago, I did it. I found a posting online and I had remembered somebody that had worked here in the past. And I reached out to that individual, and originally my resume got bypassed because they thought that I had too much experience and would be overqualified for the role. And I reached out to somebody that I know had worked here, and they got my foot back in the door. So, and here I am, so it is who you know, but I encourage you to get online and make sure that you're really targeting that outlet as well.
I want to get back to a little bit more of that, but something you mentioning, Stacey, with the LinkedIn, I think a lot of students are nervous about creating they want to know what makes a really successful LinkedIn profile. And so as a talent acquisitionist, what do you look for on those LinkedIns that makes you go, besides I've got 3 years experience? Is there anything else? Mm-hmm. What about the headline? Can you talk a little bit about what makes a great LinkedIn profile for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's not about so many years of experience. You should be putting your volunteer affiliations. You should be putting your internships. You should be putting, groups that you're members of. You should be connecting with other individuals. Building out your network. If you've only got 5 or 6 connections, you need to do a little bit more work on it. Make sure you have a profile picture. That's a big one, because if you don't have a profile picture, we're not, as recruiters and talent acquisition managers, we're not real sure that you're a real person. So put your picture up there. But it's not about years and years and years of experience. It's about showing that you're active and you're engaged on the platform, and a catchy headline and what you're looking for, and maybe a little bit of an introduction in your bio, of who you are and some of your goals. That goes a long way. That shows us that you have potential and a willingness to learn.
Thank you. Does anybody have any opinions on the LinkedIn profiles? It can be a little bit more informal than the resume. But what do you feel about, I know I've had this asked by students, listing bullet points on a LinkedIn as opposed to a paragraph form describing?
I still personally, I help people with LinkedIn all the time as part of my job at Career Advantage, and I still have people put bullets that align with their experiences. So it gives the employer some insight on what they've accomplished. So, it's not enough to just know that you student taught at this school, but putting a few bullets within LinkedIn gives them a little bit more depth, and shows them what you've accomplished, and can highlight some of your strengths and your philosophy, related to teaching, for example, if we just stick with that example. So I do recommend putting some bullets with your experience, each of your experiences in LinkedIn. And then also, like Stacy was saying, without about section or bio section, that's your opportunity to show your personality a little bit, and to show your passion for your industry, and really kind of sell yourself within that about section. So those are some suggestions that I have.
Excellent. Those are great. Anybody else? Okay. We were talking about some of the advice that you recommend, and talked about networking and just getting out there and having good LinkedIn profile, talking to your professors, like you said, Caroline. What skills do you think employers are looking for in these areas of education, training, the helping professionals? What skills do you think are really needed? And do you have any suggestions for students who are in their last semester to get those kinds of experiences? Or maybe something that you wish you would have gotten before your first job? How's that?
I'll start again first.
And can you speak up a little more, Caroline? I think it's a little hard. Does
Better?
anybody?
Is that better?
It is better. Thank you.
Headphones are kind of dumb. So, in terms of skills, social work is a helping profession, obviously. And so you need skills to be able to work with people. And you're going to see people in their most vulnerable states. So that also requires, one, a lot of patience, two, a lot of integrity, um, and also um, just kindness. Um, we can get lost a lot in paperwork and um, rules and things like that. And rules are very important. And it's also important to know your own values and your own morals and ethics. That is going to really help set a foundation for who you are as a person, um, especially with working with people who are vulnerable. Um, Integrity, I think, is a huge aspect of working in a helping profession, um, because it sets the tone for who you are and if people can trust you. You have to have integrity in your documentation of interactions between people. Um, and if you're not honest and transparent with those people, it's going to be very difficult to do your job. Um, Something I wish that I knew when I was starting was it's hard and it's rewarding. And I wish I had known better coping skills for how to deal with the really hard stuff. Um, a lot of it is just learning as you go. And so it's important to give yourself grace as well for what you don't know. So it's good to be humble and um, be willing to learn.
Thank you. That's great advice. Any other skills or
I would add to kind of carry on, Caroline, coachability. That's a huge factor. I mean, especially with somebody who doesn't have as much work history under their belt. We want to look for individuals that, even if they don't have, all of the, nice to haves, we want to know that they're willing to learn and that they're coachable. I think there is also a lot to be said about bringing some emotional intelligence to the workforce. The days of being, in solo responsibility are kind of over. You will always work as a team and, on projects and in work groups. That's not very different than some of you in some of your majors, and having to work alongside as teams. That carries over in the workforce. So we really want to know that you can work in collaboration with your team members and that you'll be a good added, team member, and that you're not going to bring a lot of drama and issues every day. So that emotional intelligence really goes a long way, to know that you can work with others, and, that you can also kind of read the room and understand it's not just about you. There's so many people that have to work together to get, meet an end goal. So I think coachability and emotional intelligence is huge. Anything you can do to take a course on emotional intelligence, I would highly recommend. And doesn't matter how many years of experience you've got under your belt, it always comes in handy as a good reflection.
and Erin, I want to ask you about what you think those skills are, but I want to just ask one other question to follow up with that, Stacy. Um, Other than taking a course in intellectual intelligence, how do you recognize that? How do you recognize that skill on a resume for students?
It's really hard to recognize on a resume. I mean,
Mhm.
this is something that, your communication skills are going to show us a lot. And that's why we interview. We do phone interviews, we do Zoom interviews, we do in-person interviews. If there's a position that you're really interested in, you need to recognize that, you do have to come prepared to demonstrate that you've got the chops to handle, what that role is going to look like. So good example is, recognizing if somebody's asking you about how you work alongside in teams and what role do you typically play. If you come in hard charging and saying, I'm always the leader, everybody does what I say, that kind of gets us a little bit concerned that you don't know how to work with other people. So that's kind of that emotional intelligence, read the room, understand what's being asked of you.
Yeah, I think Stacy and Carolyn, you said this very, very well, and I don't know if I have too much to add, but I think just having empathy, especially in a helping profession, it's so important. Being able to you know walk in someone else's shoes and look at different perspectives and develop strong relationships to build that trust. I think is extremely important. And so I really don't have anything to add, but one thing I wanted to say is I think one way, especially in education and helping professions, is to volunteer. That's one way that you can really start developing skills and utilizing these qualities that you'll be utilizing in a job. And those are great experiences that you can talk about in an interview, that you can put on a resume, that you can elaborate on a cover letter. So, look for opportunities in the community that you can get involved in something that you're passionate about. And that I think can definitely help you, gain some of those skills and be able to tell your story better in your application materials and in an interview. So definitely look for opportunities to volunteer.
Hey, Kim, can I follow up?
Please.
I feel like each one of the panelists is cueing me for different things, and I'll put some of this in the chat. But combining a little bit of what Stacy just was talking about with Erin, I mean, Erin was in this at KU. Kim and I are in this at KU. We want you to become involved as students, engaged and involved, and I won't get into the semantics on those two different things, but giving your time not only to your schoolwork, but finding moments to join clubs, to join volunteer organizations on campus. You know, springtime is usually we have our big volunteer event that the name's escaping me, but it'll come back in a second, in the spring. And Stacy just said that, you know, when you're building your LinkedIn profile, it's not just your job experiences, that you should also put in your volunteer experiences and the groups that you're a part of and clubs and organizations. And I want to say to you seniors out there, as somebody, and this is my personal experience, who wasn't necessarily as involved as I suppose I would have liked to have been, looking back on it, it's not too late. You know, look for those opportunities to get involved this spring, and, you know, build out that part of yourself. And in those involvement opportunities, this is what I wanted to connect it to what Caroline and Stacy were saying. You can build emotional intelligence when you put yourself in situations to interact with others, even in virtual spaces, which is the reality of where we are, at least, you know, on KU's campus right now. And so that's one thing I wanted to highlight. Erin brought up empathy, and we actually have a free webinar, and I'll put it up, that the Alumni Association is partnering with it's a group called the Alumni Learning Consortium. It's all about empathy and building your empathy muscle, and it is tomorrow at 11 a.m. All you got to do is register, and I'll put the registration piece in the chat. Networking has come up, LinkedIn has come up. If you're not on KU Mentoring, I'll put the link in the chat. It is a localized Jayhawk LinkedIn. We have almost 5,000 alumni there who have said, yes, I will create a profile, tell you who I am, and be here for whoever you are that wants to reach out and network with me. And so if you're not on mentoring, we really recommend that. I'm going to put that there. And then the last thing I want to say is that I'm a moderator tonight, and then I'll stop taking up space. But as I was talking about with Stacy when we first got on, I'm an educator. And when I was but I don't have a teaching certificate. So I majored in history and English, and a few of you have messaged me individually in the platform and said, I don't know what I'm going to do after college or what have you. And I was in that boat, and I didn't have a teaching certificate. But when I was an undergrad, I worked at the local high school. I coached. And I also got tapped to be a substitute teacher. And I'll tell you right now, if that's something that you're interested in trying out, the local school districts are desperate for substitute teachers. They've changed their rules on who can substitute teach. They may be looking for coaches, especially for like middle school teams and things like that. You may look around locally for getting involved with the school district. And my first job, and this is the last piece, that I got out of college without a teaching certificate, and I feel like this is known a lot on the East Coast where I'm from, but I don't hear about it as much here in the Midwest, is there's an organization out of Boston called Carney Sando, and their job is private schools on the East Coast pay them to find good candidates, often recent graduates from college, to be teachers in the private schools, which was a great job for me right out of college. I was 22. I, was single. I didn't have family obligations. I was a dorm parent, so my room was paid for. I had summers off. It was a really great place for me to kind of get started, build on what I had done, substitute teaching, and move into like a transition space to another part of my life. So Carney Sando is still out there. They're still looking for people to be candidates for private school jobs all across the country, but heavily skewed to the Northeast. And I'll put that link here in the chat.
Thanks, Howard. Perfect. That's a nice transition what I was going to ask, but when you had mentioned volunteer, Erin, we do have a list on the boot camp website and the career website as well with volunteer opportunities to do during COVID, because I think where a lot of students are stressing out right now is that sure, they'd love to go volunteer, but everything's in crazy world right now. Not a place as to where do you volunteer when you can't go in and things are closed. So there are things you can do, and we do have a list of resources for that as well. But what I want to do is I want to transition from what Howard said. You kind of read my mind there. Is that Caroline, you had a health undergrad in social work and went right into, and you knew exactly. But there are some people that they get their degree and decide I don't want to teach. And I know Scott, one of our students here, right? I think that was the situation. And here he's got all this teaching experience and then transitioned over. How was that transition for you? And any advice?
I can jump in. You described me 100% right there, Kim. So I did have a secondary English education bachelor's degree. I did teach for 3 years. After my first year, I was pretty certain that that was not the profession that was a good fit for me, and I decided I was going to quit. I ended up getting a receptionist position in Kansas City, and then went ahead and did teach for 2 more years, and immediately knew that that was not, going to work out for me. So what I did is, I thought more about my passion. What is my passion? What have I always loved? And that answer for me was psychology. And so that led me to get the counseling degree, the master's in counseling psychology from KU. And the nice thing about that degree is that it is in the School of Education. So it was transferable. There were definitely some similar skills still in the helping profession. But I think, taking a step back and just really thinking about your passions, your skills, your strengths, what you did like about teaching, what you didn't like about teaching, what drew you to that profession to begin with, and starting to think about those things to kind of figure out where you might want to go as far as a next step. Also really think about those transferable skills. So those things that we just talked about, all those skills that we just talked about are transferable, right? They're not skills that strictly describe a teacher, for example. And so really thinking about those transferable skills and how they can be utilized in different settings, I think is important. And a lot of times you can figure that out by looking at job descriptions, what people are looking for in their candidates, and then really highlighting those transferable skills at the top in your summary of qualifications or your career profile. So that's a little bit, maybe it was kind of rambling, but that's a little bit about how I ended up transitioning from teaching to counseling psychology. And I might just add one more thing there. When I went into counseling psychology, I thought I was going to be a mental health therapist. And then through experiential learning, having a practicum at a mental health facility, public mental health facility, I realized again, that wasn't a good fit for me. And so really it was a lot of trial and error for me trying to figure out, the best position for me, the best career path for me. And luckily, when I started at the Career Center, it was a good fit, and I figured it out. But it was, getting in there and immersing myself in a career and figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like, which has led me to where I am today.
Excellent. I think that's so important to keep in mind. You're not stuck in one career. There's lots of different transferable skills. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think a lot of students, they look at a job description and say, I don't have that. I don't have 3 years of this, or I don't have that, but they do have transferable skills that can either substitute or what have you. I know, Stacy, you worked in as an HR director, right? Early on.
No, I was in recruiting and a recruiting manager for a professional training and development company,
Okay.
Skillpath, here in town. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. Well, I mean, I'm talking about your very early days. Weren't you in
Oh, yeah. I worked for a small family-owned winery, and when you work for a family-owned business, you do everything. So
Yeah.
Enough to know that, and I did that for quite a while. And again, that was where my Parks and Rec background kind of led me to, because I was able to take advantage of like Missouri Wine and Grape Council and like, I was very active networking very early, and kind of focused on the tourism side of the Missouri wine industry. So I started out within more of that HR and operations and catering sales and kind of list the title of the day, so to speak. So I learned a lot when I moved to Kansas City and ventured on my job search. So
every job you've had, you've learned different skills and met people along the way. And I know probably, Caroline, you just started off, I mean, you've just been in your career for 3 years. And do you have any idea of your trajectory might be, or what you're interested in, and what kinds of things you can do with your skill set?
Sure. So you can do a lot with the skill set that
I
of
can't
social.
hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Um,
Yeah, kind of. Is this
Maybe
better?
I'm losing my hearing.
Is this like a lot better? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not blasting your eardrums now. Okay, perfect. So your question. So, um, in terms of volunteering, just to go back to that a little bit, I worked at KU. I was a resident assistant for a couple of years, but I also worked for SAPEC, so the Sexual Assault Prevention and Education Center. I did that my last year of college, and that was so many transferable skills there, and it was a wonderful opportunity. I learned a lot about data and the importance of data, um, and just the important work that they're doing over there still. And they had a lot of opportunities for other people outside of the main volunteers to volunteer, specifically in April. I don't know what it looks like now for COVID, but I mean, it was a really important time, and there were great opportunities to help set things up and table. You might not even think like, oh, tabling is like not like the hard work, but that is really important. And I know people look at that you took your time to talk to people in the union about what is needed in terms of like SAPEC or other organizations. I also had my practicum at a domestic violence shelter, which is something that I thought I wanted to go into. It was a great experience, but I learned that my skills are better in a different place. That's a really hard environment, and it takes a lot of strength for people to work there, and it's beautiful and amazing. I just figured that my skills were good somewhere else. Um, and so, like Erin was saying earlier, empathy. I mean, I have that. I know, and can for people like me who are usually introverted, it's hard to say good things about yourself. So it's knowing even in your interviews of what is good about you. So I know I'm empathetic. I'm a really great listener, and I'm very patient. And those things are three very important skills that will take me wherever I'm wanting to go. Um, I don't think I'm going to be in foster care forever. That is a very difficult job. They say that if you can last a year in child welfare, you can last anywhere over a year, which I can see. And I'm hoping to get my master's in social welfare and move on to um, becoming a therapist for children who've experienced um, high levels of trauma. I'm just very passionate, and you can see how wonderful these kids are, even with the mass amounts of hardship they've been through and how resilient children are. It's really a beautiful thing. So when you're looking at, and I would suggest reading job descriptions. When you're looking at job descriptions, and like Kim was saying, if you're seeing things that you don't think you have, sometimes it could be helpful to even like write down or print off those job descriptions and circle or highlight what you actually have, because that's going to be it's going to give you some confidence that you're not just like you don't have anything, you do have some things, and let's figure out how you can work that to find the job that you want. And so, yeah, I would really do that. That's been really helpful.
Thank you. That's great advice. I want to ask a question, and I know Stacy and Erin, you probably have a lot of experience with this, but it goes back to the networking, and we had a big discussion about it yesterday, but I'd like to hear your advice on it. It is really hard, especially if you're introverted. So Erin, you said you were introverted. To reach out, and it's how to know what to do. I mean, is it okay to reach out to a talent acquisitionist? Is it okay to reach out to the HR director? What do you say? What does it feel like? I mean, what is your advice for that?
I'll start. I love it when people reach out to me. I am not an introvert. I don't think anybody in a recruiting profession can be an introvert, because you have to be able to have a conversation with a wall at any given moment. And so I don't have any problem with that, but I love it when people reach out to me. I might not have a great opportunity that's a great fit, but I'm always going to remember that individual who reached out to me, and keep them in my network. And when I come across their profile again a year later, and maybe something will change. I mean, as Caroline is describing some of her background, I'm thinking, gosh, she'd be a good fit for this role and this role and this role that I'm hiring for right now. So, but those are the kind of things that you think about, so you have to make those connections. I think you also, to kind of piggyback on Caroline too, about, print that job description off, circle the things and the qualities that are impactful, that appealed to you about that job description. And please practice your interview skills, practice it with your parents, practice it with your friends. Start thinking about specific examples. You're going to find more and more interviews. And unfortunately, there's a lot of really bad interviews out there on both sides of the table. So it's not like managers are great at it either, but start getting in the habit of thinking of specific examples and scenarios that you've been in. That tells an employer a lot. If you can kind of dive into that behavior-based interview and give those examples, it tells us a lot more about who you are and how you will handle the scenarios when faced with them. So not only do you need to really read through the descriptions and think about what's impactful, but think about the experiences you bring to that, because that's going to put you ahead of everybody too. But those are the individuals. Even if I can't hire somebody for one reason or another and they stick out, they're going to be somebody that I'm always going to think about when I have that next position open. It's a lot easier to work that network than have to start over from scratch.
Excellent. And I want to ask you, Erin, that too. But I did want to ask you, Stacy, when people, you said you love it when people reach out. Is that the norm? I mean, because I think people are hesitant to send them a resume, and it's probably one of 100. You said you had 50 to go through. Like, do you actually pick up the phone and call them? Do you? What is most effective? And then, Erin, I want to hear your input as well.
Yeah. Sure. I'm not going to have time to call everybody, and it might be a couple of days before I can actually respond to an email or an inquiry, just given the volume and and what I've got on my plate. But I'm always going to make sure to make an effort, and I think that's also very telling of potential employers. How are they engaging with you? If you're just going into an abyss and nobody ever responds to you, you might think differently about that company. Now, the bigger the company, the harder it is to access people. So I think you have to be realistic also. I mean, you can't just, email a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and think he's going to respond to you. He's probably not even managing his own account.
Right.
So on any social media. So you have to be realistic about who you're reaching out to. But I mean, it's not in vain by any means. I would encourage you to do it, especially if there's a company or somebody that you're following that you really feel like what they're doing and the organization and what they represent. I mean, I'm in healthcare now. We service long-term care facilities and nursing homes across the country, and we don't hire anybody, whether they're office or a clinical field worker, if they don't demonstrate our core values in their interview. And our core values are compassion and care and teamwork. And if we don't see that, they're not a good fit, for our organization. So, if somebody reaches out to me and they're using some of those key buzzwords with me, I'm going to perk up a little bit.
Erin, thanks, Stacy. Erin, you actually help clients prepare for this kind of stuff, for LinkedIn, for their resume, to help them with their interviewing skills. So what input can you add to that?
Yeah, I have so much to say right now, so y'all might have to cut me off, okay? So first of all, before I forget, for all the students on the line, take advantage of the free services available to you at the Career Center at KU. Do a mock interview. If you do nothing else with that office, do a mock interview. If you ask me, that is the most underutilized career service that is out there. And any client that I've had who's done a mock interview with me has found it to be just beyond helpful. So you have that free opportunity sitting right in front of you. So do it now. Do another one, just take advantage of that. So I just wanted to get that out there. Don't be afraid. They are amazing people. I worked with them for over 13 years and they want to help. They're going to give you fantastic feedback. Yes, it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but think about how much you're going to be able to improve your interviewing skills. So do that. Second, I want to encourage you all to do informational interviews. That's something also that the Career Center at KU pushes. And people love to talk about their careers, okay? We're here today because we love to talk about what we do. We're passionate about what we do, and we want to help other people who want to do something similar. And just about everyone out there is like that, okay? And like Howard said, you have this fantastic tool through KU Mentoring where you can start doing informational interviews with people who already have that KU connection, right? So if this is something that's really uncomfortable for you, start doing informational interviews with alumni through the KU Mentoring platform, and then you're going to get more comfortable with it so you can ask a professional at the organization that you really want to work at if they will conduct a 20-minute informational interview with you. So I highly recommend that. By doing informational interviews, you're establishing a relationship, right? So then when that company has a job opportunity available, they're going to remember you. Like, oh yeah, John came in, we had that informational interview, the conversation was really great, he's really passionate about this industry. And so that could give you a leg up right there. So the third thing that I wanted to say regarding networking and being an introvert is, seriously, I'm the biggest introvert out there. And the thing that I think that helped me more than anything as a professional is I immersed myself in a professional organization. And at first I was just a member, I was just a passive member who went to the annual conference every year and, started to meet people. Eventually I served on a committee. Within a couple of years, I was leading that committee. Within a couple more years, I was the incoming president. Then, and that experience for me was so valuable. And I have created lifelong friends that I can call up at any point, to help me professionally, to serve as an ally for me, to bounce ideas off of. And that was really, really uncomfortable for me. And to be quite honest, my supervisor at the time kind of forced me to become the president of that organization. I was a little hesitant, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So find an organization, a professional organization that you're interested in, that is related to your career interests, and start getting involved. So, don't just be a member, be an active member. Start being a committee member, and that can lead to other leadership positions. So I just strongly recommend that because it was so helpful to me. And I have, like I said, lifelong friends that I can count on forever now.
That's why I love these panels, don't you, Howard? I mean, this is all great information. We've got 3 incredible panelists here that are offering such great advice. 2 things. One, I apologize, but I have to start the next panel for our scientists and technologists. So I'm going to probably pass the baton to Howard. I do want to make sure that we ask questions. And Scott had mentioned I think that you said that you wanted me to tell that story, or the story about the networking. And if you want to hear that story, you email me. I'm going to put it in the chat, and I'm going to email it back to you. Okay, so I will tell you that, since I don't have time today, but it is a great networking success story. So I'm putting my email on there. I'll send you, I'll write it up and I'll send it to you, or you can call me. But I'm going to go ahead and get off. Howard, I'll let you. Thank you for all the panelists. Thank you, students. We'll continue with questions, and I look forward to seeing you all sometime in again near future. Thank you. Okay.